All right. So on the bench today, we've got this Husqvarna chainsaw. It's a coworker's chainsaw. It's not wanting to start, so he says. I've already checked the compression. It's got plenty. He did say that he's only used this thing 2 or 3 times since he bought it. And he went to use it and it wouldn't start. Okay. Airfilter looks really good. I'm not seeing any problem there. We are going to have to take this thing off anyways because I am going to pull apart the carburetor to rebuild it. So we're going to pull the air filter out. One interesting thing about these is these are washable. So it's just a felt filter, nothing special. So we'll pull the spark plug out. In order to do that, it's pretty simple. There we go. Spark plug looks pretty good. Not seeing any evidence of anything. Let's like this. Definitely got spark, so that's not a problem. We will plug this back in because that's not the issue. And just give her a decent tighten. Now, even though this thing feels like it's got really good compression, we're still going to take the exhaust off because that'll let us get to the piston skirt and kind of see if it's scored up or not. Okay, just one nut there. And we've got the spark arrestor, which is perfectly clean. There's nothing wrong with this. Nothing there indicating that the spark arrestor is the issue. We've got a T30 bit here. I really don't anticipate we're going to find any problems here, but like I said, it is good to check everything out. So this piston looks really good, really almost brand new because it is. The piston ring looks good. From what I can see, the top of the piston looks really good too. So our issue is not the piston. One thing you should always check too with 2-cycle equipment are the fuel lines. And these are pretty easy to check. We'll just pull the cap out just for video's sake. But I always just get a pick of some kind and kind of just drag it out. These aren't in the best condition. You should probably change these out every 2 to 3 years. All right, so we're going to pull the handle assembly off, as well as probably the starter recoil, just to get it out of the way. And these are pretty easy to remove. So we have 2 bolts, 2 screws down here. And they come out just like this. Here on the other side. So you also want to be careful because you have a linkage that's coming through here that goes to your trigger. This linkage right here you want to be really careful with. And all that is you just push your trigger forward. There we go. So now that comes right off. Now we have better access to the carburetor. Now we're just going to pull the recoil starter off. Doesn't have to come off, it makes things a little bit easier. Proper sized Torx. Pull the single screw out. And then that will remove this little access cover here. So now we've got access to the rest of the carburetor. It's probably, some of you guys were having some issue. Looks to be about an 8mm. Yep, it's 8mm. And we just need to pull this screw out. There we go. Now we have access to the rest of the carburetor. Next up. All right. So we're going to carefully pull the carburetor out and off of these two studs. And then this, I'm just going to kind of slide this out if we can. And that fell off on its own. Pull the fuel line off. A little bit of pressure there, no big deal. So I did, in fact, pull this out. We've got an issue with this fuel line. So I'm going to stick a new piece in, size it up, put a new fuel filter on, and put this in the bag of crap that I'm going to give back to him to show him what old stale fuel does to these things. So with these, it's not as hard as some of the other ones, but you're just gonna stick this line back in, kind of thread it on down. You'll have to get a pair of needle nose to kind of help it in. So I'll do that. So I just push enough of it out like that so that I can put this on. All right, so here's the fun part. This is the Carb kit. A link to this is in the description if you need it. RB-149. It's cheaper to go with the ZAMA branded kit than it is with the Husky branded kit. First thing we're gonna do is take these 4 screws out. This is gonna be where the bulk of what we need to replace is going to be. So what I like to do is just kind of pry up like that with a small screwdriver. Ooh, that does not feel good. Get to that in a second. So we're going to replace the needle, the seat. You want to be really careful. There's a ton of small parts here, as you guys can obviously tell. So you just remove this screw, and I put my thumb there so it won't fly somewhere. And you have the needle, the spring, that little lever, as well as a new pin. Now what we can also do is clean out everything that's in here. You just use a little carb spray. You clean out each one of these holes and passageways. Pretty simple. So one thing that's really important with these is to take your time, because you will very easily mess up and piss yourself off if you rush. And remember, these parts are really small. So what I normally like to do is get the spring in first and then hold one of my fingers up here to keep the needle in, as well as hold the pin with my other finger. And then I put the needle in first, align the pin, and then very carefully might need some assistance, just like that. Then I'll get the screw, kind of plop that in place. Don't want to do it too tight, and you want to make sure that that spring and lever still moves. This one does, so I'm happy with that. Good news is that's the hardest part. So it's very likely, though, where your issue is going to be with any of these carburetors, whether it be a chainsaw or weed eater, doesn't really matter. So your issue is going to be with these little gaskets. When they get old, they don't get pliable anymore. So it actually meters the fuel, which in turn, it works on this little needle right here. Helps it move back and forth. Got another screw that needs to come off here. This off. There's that little fuel screen. We will be replacing this. To do that, you can usually just pry these out, just like that. So we can grab the new one, stab it right in there, very carefully. You can use a proper size socket, or if you're really careful, you can use a flathead screwdriver like I am. You don't need a lot of force to push these in. I'm just kind of really letting this weight of the screwdriver push it in there. But there's that. So now we can get to these. A quick wipe down, and just for the record, I'm going to spray this out with some carb cleaner. Pretty simple, but they've got a single alignment pin here, and we're just going to throw this back on. Just like that. Grab that single screw, that back in. Make sure all four of those holes are lined up. Now we've got this, which we've got to replace. So with putting the new gasket on, you want to make sure that you get the rubber part against this outer piece, just like that. Make sure the wagon wheel is pointing towards you, and your paper gasket and the carburetor. These can really only go on one way. Well, one thing that I've found that helps me with lining them up is if you get one of the screws and you just stick it through, and it kind of acts as another dowel pin. You can do one on the other side as well if you so desire. And you can see this hole right here. Again, it only goes on one way. And then you have another hole over here. You're going to line those up. And just like that, just thread the screws back down. Now obviously, you want to make sure that you get both of these linkages back in. This one goes right here. So you just kind of pop it in like that. And then your blue choke lever goes right there. Carburetor's aligned back with the studs, so we're just going to assist it back on. And then we've got this fuel line, which I just removed right here. No big deal. Put that back on. Make sure everything is where it should be here. So this you're going to have to help up and in through here. It is going to take a little bit of patience, I should warn you. So inspection panel. Kind of help that through. That's that. Just making sure all the linkages work before I have everything back together. It's doing everything it should. Stick the handle back on, and the most difficult part here is probably going to get this linkage back on for the throttle. Short one goes here at the end of the handle. That. Perfect. So now we just stick the felt air filter back on. This one I'm not going to really bother cleaning because it's still new. If you do need to clean it, just use some mild soap and water. Nice and easy with this. That's it. The recoil, put this back on. As I said, you guys could probably figure it out on your own now. It didn't really need to come off, but I just took it off just because. So this cover here goes right back in like this, with this part coming out towards where this goes. Pop this back on, just like that. These are thankfully all the same size, but again, if you're using an impact, be careful. All right, so now we're just putting the top cover back on. One pop is enough. All right, so let's put some gas in this thing and see what's going to happen. All right, so let's see if this pig will give us a start. Primer's working. It's all full of fuel. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that was a pop. Got the blade brake on too. not bad. Good little runner now. That's not too bad. It's an easy 40-50 bucks right there. Just had to rebuild the carburetor, replace that one fuel line, and that was about it. That just goes to show you guys what happens if you leave old gas in these, and you know, you don't even drain them out before you're done for the season. That's why I always recommend people do that. So unfortunately, that's what happens. It just, all that stuff just gums up, especially those fuel lines. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and stay tuned for more.